Hello, it's Joy from Email and Coffee, and today we're talking with Dylan Kelly about SMS. So there's a ton of stuff to talk about, but before we get into the meat and potatoes, Dylan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joey. It's great to be on the show. My name's Dylan. Like you said, I run a boutique agency focused on email and SMS for primarily e-commerce brands, mostly direct to consumer. So we get to see how email and SMS interact, specifically around like how people buy stuff. And it's been really interesting to watch SMS enter the mix over the last couple of years. We've done we power over 100 million in revenue through email and SMS in total for clients every single year. And yeah, it's been interesting over the last 5 years. We started out doing purely email starting a few years ago, started testing the waters with SMS. So I've been able to kind of see the whole landscape of like, this current era of digital that we're in and see how like SMS fits into the picture and what's working, what's not working, how it's evolved, and kind of initial thoughts on what's happening with both those channels. Um, and some ideas on the future from that data that we have.
It's a very nice marriage, and it's beginning to, the love story is beginning to play out.
It's
Where,
continuing to evolve, yes.
yeah, it's continuing to evolve where a lot of people um, were hesitant to do SMS, didn't know where to do SMS. Maybe they were doing email, maybe they were just doing SMS. It's evolving, like you said. So, will SMS replace email?
Well, it's very interesting because especially what you said, like the relationship is evolving. When even when I started my consultancy back in 2016, there's quotes of me, there's audio snippets of me on podcasts saying people are like, "What should people be thinking about SMS?" I was like, "Don't worry about it yet." I literally said that, like, don't think like SMS doesn't matter. At the time, I think I might have even called it a fad at one point because at the time it kind of was. Brands, retailers, marketers were looking at it as kind of like this, like it was just almost like a feature instead of a real channel back then. It was just like, oh, I can add this and maybe it'll do something. Kind of like TikTok is now. Like TikTok is going to be a channel, but like people are still trying to figure it out. So it's like you're throwing money at it, not really sure if it's going to work. 5 years ago, consumers really weren't bought into SMS at a high level like they are now. And so yeah, I've been able to watch that. And what's interesting now is like we have the technology that we used to have with email has now come full circle to SMS. So we have it's a lot easier to send a text nowadays than it was 5 years ago. You don't have to use, like we were talking before we recorded, like there's not these crazy APIs you have to connect. You don't need 20 developers. We didn't even know what SMS compliance was back then because we didn't know if old laws and regulations like the TCPA, like does that apply to text, because that was created in like the 80s for calling, and now we have court cases that say yes it does. And so it's really evolved a lot, and it's just like digital in general. It's moved a lot over the last few years. Will SMS replace email? Potentially, eventually, in the very long term, but in the short term, I don't see that happening. We still see email as a really powerful revenue driver among all audiences, even Gen Z. It's some of our highest performing clients on email. They have customers on Gen Z. And what's interesting about these younger generations is while SMS is driving a lot more opens and engagement than a channel like email, in a lot of cases, revenue now we're seeing, which we can get into email and SMS performance if you'd like in a separate question. But just in general, like because Gen Z is being groomed with email being like a promotional channel, it's like another feed for them, like Instagram, except it's driven for purchase. So it's almost like the magazine of the modern days, and it's a great place for people to stay up to date with their favorite brand. Whereas like SMS is great and it works really well, but you can't include the same information in a text like you can in email. And it's almost like email is becoming this like mix match of like it's like a text in terms of like its own audience and you can send to it, but it's like also like an Instagram post, but more in depth. So it's a nice combination of like really what these younger generations are used to. So I think we're going to see a lot more SMS. SMS is going to continue to evolve like email channel has over the last 20 years. I don't think email is going anywhere in the short term. And even if it does, like if brands start leaving email as a channel, which I don't think they should, because a lot of brands haven't started doing email in general, that just opens up more opportunity for the people who are in the inbox.
SMS when it goes with the full image, it's evolving into more than just a text medium. It's becoming an image and text medium. And as that evolves, that's even more of an interesting relationship with email, because do you make it almost look just like the email with a big text message, with a big image, a big text message, a big call to action? Is it,
Right.
they're experimenting with that right now. We'll
Yeah.
see where it ends up going. So, there is a clear difference between, like you said, how the different generations consider email marketing, consider their inbox. As the baby boomers exit the stage, they're so used to the email everything coming into their email. Oh, send me an email, you've got new mail, you've got mail. They're so used to that. And as the younger generations come up, they have many channels. It's just not the email channel. So, email versus SMS performance with millennials and Gen Z, where is that going? How do you take a look at your stats and take into consideration that you used to just have an email channel? You may have Facebook, you may have Instagram, you may have the other channels as well, and now suddenly you've got this SMS channel, and now your revenue's all over the place. How do you work on that? What are the insights? What should clients be thinking about when they actually roll out an SMS and the different generations and the revenue channels? What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, great question. And the way we've started thinking about email and SMS is almost looping them together as one in terms of like, I guess you could call it like retention channels or life cycle channels or owned channels. I really wish there was like a word that we all chose. Like it was kind of like even like like 2 years ago, it was like we were trying to figure out what do we call SMS? Do we call it mobile messaging? Do we call it text message marketing? Now we call it SMS, which is funny because you can also send MMS, like images, which you were talking about. But anyway, I eventually will agree on a term for what we call both of them. But yeah, in terms of like what we're seeing is like we like to measure both together, and then what we find is like attribution from those channels together ends up growing, and email to SMS might go up or down depending on the type of content we're sending and the audience we're sending to. What is really interesting is we have a lot of clients we work with who are up and coming D2C brands that are heavily focused on Gen Z. So one of our clients, they grew off the back of TikTok to millions of dollars in revenue within just a few months off the channel. They came to us not doing a lot with email. They were doing a lot with SMS, seeing great results. And they're like, we really don't know what to expect from email because we have a younger audience. We haven't really done much with it. Within 3 months, actually within 2 months, we scaled the channel to over 30% of their digital revenue. And so it's like looking at that and our other clients, it's like you definitely have to take more of a TikTok approach to the strategy and the creative. So we're talking, it's very flashy, it's very bright, it's very colorful, not a lot of text. We're literally, embedding TikToks in some of the emails or different content creative, pushing people back to social, and also creating more of a brand experience. But we're noticing like that's creating a really great experience for these types of customers in the email channel. It's driving a lot of results, which is really surprising because I think people's first intention is like, oh, Gen Z isn't going to convert on email, but it's actually working really well because a lot of them don't have jobs yet. And so the only email they're getting is promotional. And so it's working really well and they're being trained that it's a promotional channel. And when the pandemic hit and everybody ran out of content on Instagram, and then they ran out of content on TikTok, they were starting to go to the inbox. And that's when we saw last year a rapid increase in open rates. It was like, it's e-commerce went forward in time in terms of revenue and email went back in time in terms of engagement because everybody was opening everything and we were seeing record performance levels. And it's funny because we kind of see that with Gen Z in general on the email channel. And then SMS is like the no-brainer, right? Gen Z is always on their phone. They have no unread texts. If they do, it's like they're leaving you unread intentionally. But yeah, 90% of texts are open in like less than 5 to 10 minutes, according to Klaviyo's newest stats. And so we're seeing great performance out of that. We're seeing great performance out of email. And combining them together, we're seeing a lot of really good results as well, because you think of a generation like Gen Z or even millennials, like they open their phone and they have like 100 notifications. So how do you cut through the noise there? Well, if you send a text and an email, you have 2 chances of getting them to see you versus just 1. And so we're seeing a lot of success with that. That's kind of a quick background on a couple examples we're seeing with Gen Z and millennial audiences on email and SMS.
Possibly the entire experience of going from one channel to the other. So you get a text, you get an email. The email is going to social. This, the social talks about something. Then you get the text again. I mean, it's creating sort of a huge bubble of messaging. And if you are always on your phone and you're constantly getting that message, that's that brand identity that you're connecting with. Now, obviously, you have to have that affinity with the brand to start with. But once you do, that's the relationship that the client wants or the brand wants. They want to stay top of mind. So, if it's retail, if it's an app that they sell, if it's a service that they sell, whatever it is that they're selling, they want to stay top of mind. They don't want to compete with the noise in the background.
Yeah, and the consumers want that too. Like they don't want to miss out on your most important messages. So it's like, I love getting emails from some of my favorite brands. And I love scrolling through, but I really don't open, promotional emails on like a regular basis. Like, oh, I just got this email, let me open it. It's more of like, hey, I'm going to go through the promotions tab and kind of see what's here and stay up to date with my favorite brands without being bombarded with outside ads, like an Instagram feed or whatever. But if there's a limited edition launch or if there's a sale that is time sensitive, I don't want to miss that. That's where SMS is really cutting through the noise and working extremely well. And consumers actually really enjoy that because we've all experienced it ourselves too. When you go and you're like, discount code doesn't work anymore because I missed this email from 4 days ago. And that's the other thing with SMS that's doing really well is just like the amount of engagement that you get from it. It's like, which is, totally different topic, which we can dive into, but it's like.
But
really
if you use it correctly, if you don't send a text out every day, and like you do send out that promo code, they're going to get a million emails. They get that promo code. They're like, okay, time to shop. Bing, bing, bing. You basically used it effectively as opposed to overused it and overused your welcome where you're constantly, hello, by the way, I'm at your door again. I've got something really bland comment to say about something that you don't care about. Maybe you like it, but maybe you don't. Hello, I'm here again. Those 3 or 4 emails a day that you get from Old Navy, as opposed to that one email that you get, maybe that's the 50% off sale.
Right.
Or I should say the one SMS that you get.
The one SMS. But yeah, no, it's so true. And with that too, we really have to be careful as marketers for a couple of reasons. Like one, we're setting a precedent with SMS for consumer behavior on what to expect. So if we send daily, like we're going to be ingraining that in, these up and coming generations, they're going to think, oh, this is normal. So, you're thinking on like a moral compass, like, do we want to do that to their attention? But also too, it's like, okay, let's say you don't care. We're seeing great performance out of the channel. Let's send a message a day or 2 messages a day. Well, it's not like email as much where it's more of a passive channel. It is very, urgent, active communication. And what's interesting, and we've seen this many times, is carriers are getting involved. And so we're sending through carriers. And there's lots of proof of carriers not liking people being overly promotional. People are getting really upset at the robocalls. They're getting upset with these texts, and carriers are stepping in and cracking down. T-Mobile specifically, last year, in last May of 2020, they set limits on abandoned cart messages for SMS, which not a lot of people know about. This year with the shared short codes going away, now you need a dedicated short code also coming from T-Mobile. So it's like, okay, will SMS replace email? Well, if marketers abuse the channel, carriers are just going to shut it down and SMS isn't even going to exist as a channel.
Exactly.
So that's the other thing too. It's like, so don't quit on email, because SMS is like, even though it's an own channel like email, you're still, it's not evolved to the point of email where, we have deliverability and all these different metrics we need to keep in mind. And the inbox is a very, what is the word I'm trying to say? Like gentle, safe place. It's a safe place for people, the text inbox right now. So we just have to be careful about how we use it, because yes, it's going to impact society, but also it's like it's going to impact carriers, and they're already proving like they care a lot about their customers and they want to do the right thing. So that's something to keep in mind too.
If
When
it's
it comes to
abused, we'll
SMS.
blow a really good thing
Right.
because it will be over policed
Yeah.
to the point of oblivion.
Yeah. And it's being really well policed too. Like T-Mobile has really been on it. And it's funny because like, you know, we all joke around in these circles when we're crazy about email and SMS. It's like, of course, this new crackdown is coming from none other than T-Mobile. But that shows how much power they have. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because if we abuse the channel and we don't use it to create a great customer experience, which is more important than ever nowadays, we're not going to have the channel anymore. So that's another thing to keep in mind outside of just like strategy in your customer base. Like there's kind of that third person in the room, which is the carrier.
The carrier is the carrier. So let's talk a little bit about performance. If you can sort of share how, if SMS takes from email, or even how to measure the two together, or does it help it? Does it hurt it?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. Anytime talking about attribution, it's like what's really true, because you look at Google Analytics, you compare it to your Facebook Ads Manager, and then you compare it to the dashboard of all the software you use. You add the numbers up, and you get double your annual revenue in a month because of over attribution. So we measure as closely as we can, and we merge different sources and things like that. But in terms of like, does SMS steal sales and hurt email performance? The answer is like definitely yes in some cases, but the way we look at it is overall attribution to the channels of email and SMS. So let's just call them owned channels because you own the list, just to make it easy. That's kind of where we start measuring. So what is your owned revenue contribution? So let's say you're doing just email and you're getting 20, just to use easy numbers, you're getting 20% of your revenue from email. It's like, great. Then you add SMS. Your email revenue might dip to 15 to 18%, but then SMS is now driving an extra 10%. So now you're really at 25 to 28%. So while it is cutting into that, it's still driving more owned revenue. And in some cases, we actually see it not decreasing email performance. We actually see it increasing performance because the channels are working together. And this varies on a client by client and their customer type basis and the type of audience they have, obviously. So I don't have a clear answer on that. But what's interesting is, what's crazy about SMS is it's essentially an email that just gets opened by everybody. So when you're getting an email opened by, maybe I think retail average last year was like 15%. You can imagine if you double the amount of people who open your email, you're most likely going to double the revenue from the channel. And so if you 4x that and you're getting 80 to 90% open rates, or in some cases even higher, you're going to see a lot more revenue that the email channel is missing out on just because of what's happened with email. It's more competitive in the inbox. There's a lot more companies in there. There's a lot more emails in there. Volumes increased. The amount of companies in your inbox has increased. So that's what's interesting to think about with SMS as well, is like, yes, it's going to cannibalize, but there's also those 80% of people who aren't even opening your emails to begin with, that now they are opening your messaging. You're going to get a lot more revenue. So it's not directly increasing email performance, but it's increasing performance of those existing customers and lists that you have, provided that you do have their SMS opt-in as well.
Yeah, what I noticed recently is that with a client that we started to get more serious with SMS, is that we had 30% of revenue in email, and then it slowly started to drop, and it's now at 20%. I've got the SMS 2 channels out there that are doing 3 and 5%, depending. There's depending on how we split out the list to the SMS segments. But there's also an odd uptick in direct. And I think there are some people that may go to SMS, may go to email, then they go directly in.
Yeah.
Now they know the brand name. They're like,
yeah.
I have to go to .com, and they go directly in.
Yeah. Or it's like, oh, I have this discount code here on my phone. It's like, I hate buying on my phone. I buy everything on my computer,
Exactly.
Which is why you look at the conversion rate. Email converts really well still because people are used to buying things on a computer. It's like a formalized thing. You sit down, you're like, let me make sure the card's right, the address is right. Like even yesterday, it's like, had a package shipped to the wrong address. Whoops. Like that's a problem with mobile. but no, it's like, yeah, I look at my phone, I got the discount code. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just go to direct and like look it up. So it's like attribution is really all over the place. But yeah, I mean, that's totally a thing.
It's difficult to adjust once it's been 3 months and I've watched slowly email erode, and then I'm suddenly direct popped up. Now what's that? And I'm taking a look and I'm seeing desktop also slightly increasing. I'm like, everybody's running to the desktop. They're not doing it on their phone, because if it was going to their phone, why would they navigate on their phone? They would just do it directly through a link in their phone.
Right.
But they're not. Like you said, here's the discount code. I'm going to go to my computer, type it in, and I'm going to make the sale online, not on the phone.
Yep.
Direct in. Very odd behavior. So a lot of people can see a lot of different behaviors as per brand, per carrier. So, if you're on two different carriers, if you're doing email on one and you're doing SMS on another, there may be some, slips in data where, like you said, you're going to have some attribution model and it's going to look a little odd. And if you try to take the bottom line from each different piece and add it together, it's like doesn't add up to your bottom line. You've got 2 times the amount of revenue that you think you should. It doesn't always work, unfortunately, these different applications. Which is why I'd suggest, if you're going to do SMS, then do it on your email. And if your email doesn't support SMS, then find an ESP that does. Just try to make life easy for yourself.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
Yeah, and something else too, like on your comment of like, okay, email performance has gone down, but we're seeing the spike kind of in SMS. One thing I know too is like that list is still very new and early. And if you think about the people who are going to be joining your SMS list, like it's probably going to be your best customers from email are going to move to SMS too, because they want all your messages. So that's why that revenue is going over there. And that revenue is going to continue to increase as you build your SMS list as well. And it's just going to continue to grow. And then also as you build out more, you think of like, okay, where's the attribution getting taken from? We're used to sending really effective abandoned cart emails. Now that we can send an abandoned cart SMS, that's one of the highest ROI converting SMS messages you can send. Like you're going to end up converting a lot more cards, get a better end goal, but ultimately you're probably going to drive less email revenue because that abandoned cart is converting at twice the rate of the email cart, abandoned cart campaign. So that's why I like to measure them together too, just because it's like, you could be moving the business forward without moving the email channel forward because you're moving, the actual metrics that matter, like, actual checkouts forward in the business.
It changes and the messaging changes and it becomes somewhat of a real flow where you're suddenly you say to yourself, maybe I need to align all of my channels with a message, with a voice,
Yes.
with a design, with a layout, with the same colors. Maybe I really do need to get them out of the silo. That's probably my biggest wish, is getting the social, the email, the SMS, getting them out of the silo.
Oh my goodness. Yes. That's one of the biggest problems inside of like online retail, that 95% of brands are making that mistake. They have such a disjointed and discombobulated customer experience. They send you a text with one discount, an email with a totally different offer and creative, and then you're seeing a Facebook ad that's different. And then you're doing this all while sitting on your phone, watching TV and getting the TV 10 discount code right there. It's just such a disjointed experience that it's just like, I don't know if I'm getting the best deal, so I'm not going to order. But if everything was the same, it's like, wow, like this must be some big deal, some big promotion, or like this company's everywhere. They seem on point, but people get confused really easily. And when attention is like lower than ever and more expensive to come by, it's like people just go on to the next ad and on to the next email.
They also don't necessarily align the brand as one brand. They may think it's 2 different companies.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You got 5 different agencies working with 5 different point of contact. And this one likes this messaging. This one likes this design. And that's a different conversation for a different day.
Yeah,
we could go into that, but it's a huge problem. And it's funny because, and then brands are like, hey, should we add a mobile app? It's like, well, you should just align everything first, or you should just get the basics right on email before even probably trying to launch SMS. Because if you're not fully tapped into email, I mean, you're just going to be building more on like a bad foundation. And it's so funny
And the
because I
house
was
of
in
cards will eventually fall.
exactly, and I was talking on a podcast yesterday. They're like, "What are the advanced email and SMS strategies that brands should be using?" I'm like, honestly, none of them. They need to do the fundamentals first. Like 1 to 5% of retail brands actually have optimized CRM programs. Like maybe, like who has good emails? I don't know. Like Sephora, like that's all people say. They're like, I unsubscribe for anyone else. Like, are you on Staples email list? Probably not. Like, no offense, Staples, hire us, we'll help you. But like, there's a lot of room, even on email, to drive more performance.
Yeah, we could talk for hours. It's been a
Really?
pleasure.
Yeah, we really could.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're an online retail, if you're inside of e-commerce or marketing, and you want to level up your email and SMS program with a proven partner who's focused exclusively on e-commerce and email and SMS, and you're hearing these topics and you want to make sure your email program is optimized, you want to figure out SMS and launch it and optimize it the right way, that's exactly why My Boutique Agency exists. We don't work with a ton of brands. We don't do anything besides email and SMS for these brands and running really well-oiled, best-in-class programs. If that interests you, you can learn more about what we do at wavebreak.co. If you want more resources into how we think about retention marketing and the impact it can have on your business and how you can double e-commerce revenue without doubling your ad spend, we put together a free article. It's not gated or anything. You can pick that up at wavebreak.co/retention-marketing. And then you can get on our email list, funny enough, because, email company, get on our email list, see how we do email. And also get our insider info on what's working now for our clients, as well as we partner with a lot of the latest in technology and e-commerce to figure out what's working in the greater marketplace and share those secrets with you through the list, which you can sign up at wavebreak.co/resources. So yeah, really appreciate you having me on, Joy. This has been a blast.
Are you on Twitter, or can people find you elsewhere that they should connect with you?
Yeah, I guess best place to connect with me personally is probably LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn. I'm Dylan Kelly on there, at Dylan Kelly. I can make sure you get the link, but I don't really tweet much. You can follow me, but I won't probably tweet. I try to, I'm not very busy over there. I get sucked in too easily, and I'm already addicted to LinkedIn. So
yeah, I know. And there are so many tools that I find myself very often find myself down a rabbit hole going, how did I get in here? It's been 4 hours.
Especially Twitter, because everybody's debating everything. So it's just like a lot of opinions. And it's like, of course, I have an opinion on it. That's why we're both here on this show. And before you know it, you're arguing with somebody over something that in the grand scheme of things doesn't really matter, because we just need to focus on doing our work. And that's what I try my best to focus on.
I do run back to my computer when I start a conversation, because I'm like, I have to finish a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
This is
get those words per minute up on the keyword.
Yeah, it's definitely called addiction. We have a problem here.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks
Likewise.
for joining Email and Coffee. Happy email marketing, y'all. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.